Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bootcamp class number 28, I think, today. Today, we will be working with multi-step forms. So, Daniyal will start and he'll show us how to build multi-step forms with, I think, Material UI. And then he'll hand it over to me and we'll build a project that combines what we learned in the last class. So, Formic, Yup, and Material UI. Anything you guys want to add?
I just wanted to add something that after this, we are going to cover component-based development, which is very important. And after that, the actual programming will start with both the client and the server side. And we are going to first explore the client side in detail. We are going to see what are the what's the difference between client side rendering and server side rendering and server side generation, and what is Jamstack, why is it being adopted so quickly, what is serverless, and we'll go after that. But then the next class we'll go over storybook and component based development and bit.dev. Daniel, please take over.
Yes, sir. Yes, hello everyone. Today we will cover multi-step form using Formik, and for the library, for the UI, for the user interface, we will use Material UI, and for the validation of our forms, we will use Yup. So, should I share my screen now? Yes.
Yeah.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
No.
No, I'm seeing it.
Yes, me too. I can see it.
Okay, okay. Let's create the project first. Sir Zeeshan have already covered Formik and Yup in last class. Today, he has covered the single page form. Today, I will cover the multi-step form. So, I just created a folder, and here I installed the fresh React project using npx.
Daniel, can you
Multi-step.
make it bigger, please?
Sure. Yes, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, it's better.
Perfect. Yeah, it's creating now. Basically, in React, we have multiple libraries. Formic is one of the forms library that we can use to build our forms, the large forms and short forms with validations using Yup. So once the project is created, then I will install the dependency of Formic. So Zishan has already covered what is Formic and how we use it. We have multiple ways to use Formic. Here Formic also provide us the components. One is this one Formic, and here is we have multiple attributes. So first attribute is initial values. Whatever the fields we want, we can pass the initial value here. Same as the validation. What validation on each field we want. So we can validate from here. Also, we have another way, that is the validate schema. Let me show you from here. Validate schema. Validate schema. I think that is not here. Let me show you what I want to share. Here is, you can see, here is a in the Formic component, we have a attribute of validate. So here, if we don't use yup, so then we need to write custom logic in this validate component. And if you want to use the yup library for the validation to write the schema of every field, so here we can pass the validate schema attribute, and whatever the yup provide, whatever we write in yup about the field schema, we can pass it over here, and I will show you that from the code. That is my target for today's into this class. So let me show. Yes, it's done. Now I'm in the project. First of all, definitely we need to install Formic. Yes, here is we have from yarn. We can install it from yarn. Sudo yarn add Formic. And another library definitely we are using, that is yup. I also add yup, yarn add yup for field validations. Once it's installed, and third one is we are definitely using material UI. So let me install material UI as well. These three libraries we will use in this project. Okay, I open this code. So here you guys can see in package.json we have a Formic, we have yup, and also we have material UI. Here is we have a material UI installed in this dependencies. So first of all, we create today's what we are going to create. We are going to create multi-step form using a material UI stepper. So here is we have multiple steppers which material UI provides us. So we don't need to write a custom stepper form. We can use this stepper forms. Here is we have multiple stepper forms. So we are using this one. We are using this one. So I just copy it, and I will customize it according to our project. We don't need the whole code. I will customize it or refactor it. So first of all, I just created a folder here, stepper. uh, I'm using Linux, so definitely I need permissions. Cth sudo chmod 7-r multi step form. All done. Now I can create the folder here, stepper, and in this we create a index.js file. Oh, sorry, it's created a folder. Here, no. Okay. Now I just copy it and paste it here. All my material UI code, and just import it in app.jsx, app.js. Here is code statement, and here is I have a stepper form. Okay, provide the name here, stepper, and just remove that all the things, all this code, and paste it stepper here. Let's try to run this form. Clear, and sudo yarn start. I'm not in this folder. Sudo yarn start. So basically, you all guys can see, you all students can see. Here is we have a stepper form, which provide by material UI, and in this stepper form we have multiple steps, like first step, like second step. Let's suppose we have a form that is first step is add address, second step is add card number, and third step is review, and then place it order. So this is basically a stepper form, and how we can create using multiple components. One component should be this one, second component should be this one, and third component should be this one. Yeah, and and all the components we are using forms. In all the components we are using forms using Formik. And yep. So now time to run the project. It's all running. What I just copied and pasted here. Okay, everything is working fine here. Now what we need it here. Let's suppose I have a requirement. Here I'm going to index.js. We don't need this all things here. We are trying to keep the things simple. There we don't need this all the things. Okay, here is we have a basic stepper. Now we create the forms here. First form is add address, second form is add card details, and third form is review. So this is basically a multi-step form. So how we can validate it, and how we create the form using Formik. So now I create a folder. Name is forms, or it should be components. Here we define the forms. Address, first form should be address. Here index.jsx in it. Second one, as I mentioned you, second one should be the payment detail. So let's create another component with the name of payment, and in this component we will define the logic. So just create a file of JSX, and third component should be review, a review component. And here we define the index.jsx file. Okay, here we use our forms. So basically we can define in earlier days uh, the custom forms. So we need to do work with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. A lot of work with custom work using HTML and CSS. So nowadays we have multiple libraries uh, to manage our time. Like we have a Formik library. So we are using now Formik. Now I'm going back on this Formik tutorial, and I can show you this is all done, Sir Zeeshan, by last class. In last class they have done all these things. So today so Adil bhai is also create the project, so we have not much time. I will show you the format tags. which one we can use it. This one is okay. This one also is okay. Yes. This one is fine. This one is also a good one. So here is you guys can see what Formik is doing. You can see here we are importing Formik field form error message. So in earlier days, that all work we need to do explicitly by ourselves. Now the library is providing us everything. If we need to throw the errors, so we don't need to write the code every time or ourselves. The libraries provide us the components. So here is we have a component error message from Formik, also a field. So we don't need to define input fields and type and everything and error handling. That is all provided by Formik. So what I do is here, first of all, I just copied this one and explain it from our code. So here is we have multiple components as I have already created it here and pasted the code here. Now I just change the name of my component address. Okay, and just we need to understand this code. What is happening here? Basically, this component we import from Formic, and here the first attribute you guys can see initial values. Here is we define the field value what we have. If we have multiple fields, initial values we will define in this initial value object attribute. We can also create the object above and pass it here. Here is you guys can see validation schema. That is that validation schema I was talking earlier. Here we from on this fields like in this first name, last name, email, that all validation we use yup. For every field validation we use yup. So you guys can see here, here is we have another attribute which provided by Formic, validation schema. You guys can also do custom work using this validate attribute. But here what you will do, you will get the values. Let's suppose here you will get the values in this callback, in this arrow function, first name, last name, email, and then validated from yourself by custom validations. So we don't need that all the things because we have now yup. So using yup, you will do that all the things. You now validation schema attribute is here. You guys can see yup, I have already imported in this code using yup static as yup from yup. We can also do this thing like this: import a string from yup, and here we can do this like this. Okay, so multiple ways to do same thing. Now back to this code, import static as yup, and from now from yup we can import, we can get all the properties which we want from the yup. And here is you guys can see the max property. Max property, if we need a field that we want the maximum length should be 15 character, so we can define it yup.string dot max, and in the max we can define the value the character, how many characters we want from this field. Let's suppose here is we have a field, any field, let's suppose if here is no anyone, I just create it quickly. Save it and I call it here, then I create it. Okay, stepper. Here I import my component in the stepper. components slash address. Okay, now I call the address here, address component here, and here definitely I just copy the code. So according to our need, we modify it. So now what we need on the first step, we need a address form. On the second step, we need a payment form, and on the third step, we have to review the form. Okay, so now here I will call this component. Okay, address, and here also you guys can see does not contain a default export. Index.jsx. Export constant. Uh, let give me a second. Okay. Yes. Now it should work. Perfect. Here, just give me a second. I call it. Definitely, we need to render the components. Now we need to call this function to render the components. Here is I'm calling it get step content active step. You guys can see now on the first step we have this form, because according to our material UI, you guys can see here is we have here is I have a created function get step content, and in this function we have a switch cases. Let's suppose the active index is 0, so then render address component. If active index is 1, then render payment component. Same like this, if we have active index 2, then render I should import all the components here, component slash payment, and then component slash review. Okay, here is we need a payment component, and here is review component. Okay, also I just here is I have nothing. I just copy it for a second and write the name payment. I will change that everything in a second. Also in the review, I will do the same. Okay, here is this and this one. Now export payment, export constant address, and review. Now what I need to do, I just need to call components. Now you guys can see here is we have first name, last name, email address in step 1, and I'm not filling the values here, so you guys can see this field showing me the error, throwing the error. This is required just because if I go back in first component, here I have a validation and I have put the method of required. This field is required and put through this error, the custom error what I want. If I don't need to place it here, then it will just provide the required error. If I explicitly we can explicitly define the errors what we want to throw, so we can write it here, required uh, necessary field, whatever you want. You can see whatever the error we want, we can throw it from here. So the validation schema attribute provided by Formic, and in this validation is a schema attribute, we define the validation using yup. What we did, we just import yup here and call the method of object which provide by yup, and this method takes an object. Here we define the schema. We can also use the best practices, that is we define all the validation separately and just import the validation schema and paste it here. So this is the best practice, but I just copied the code from Formik documentation. So here is, you guys can see the yup dot string, also a method. Here we have multiple methods which provide by yup, maximum, minimum. If we want the minimum value should be 5 character, so we can write it 5 here. And also if you want to throw the error, so we can write it here, must be 5 characters or more. So here is, you guys can see, one must be 5 characters or more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And if I write the character more than 15 characters, so again it will show the errors. So that is all validation we don't need to do manually. We don't need to use if else conditions. That is all provided by yup. So many other validations we have in yup. According to your requirement, you guys can use it. Also what I can do now, what we need is, I will create a form according to our use case or requirement area, because first one is address component, so it should be a area, city, and this two field is enough. And in the initial values I have defined the area and city. So here in the validation schema, definitely we need this fields, these properties. One is area, so we don't need this first name here, area. And on this area field I'm implementing this schema, this validation. Okay, so here is as well, we have a city, and this email we don't need it. That is all okay, it seems okay. But if I run this code, it will work? No, it will show throw the error, because here is, I don't have any error message with this name. We don't have any field with this name, first name, because I have removed it. So here what I need, once all first name replaced with area, this is basically an input field that using this field component we import from Formic. We don't need to create the input field like this. That is all handling is doing a Formic for us. And whatever the error we will receive in this component. And here we define the area name, the property name, which we have defined above here, and the schema is this. So now here is everything okay. Here is, we have a city. Okay, now this email we don't need it. And also if we add the email, so that is okay. The validation you guys can see. I just put it again. Email. Okay. Now go back. Here I also define in the initial values email. Now it should work. Okay. I also need to change the labels here. Uh, area, area name, and city name, and email address. That is okay. So put it BR over here. Now run it. That is okay. Area, city name. If we don't enter the email, then you guys can see here is I have a error. If I remove this area field, so error message component throw the error, which I have mentioned above, must be 5 characters or more. The character should be more than 5 and should less than 15. Must So that is all error handling uh, we are doing with Yup and Formic. We don't need to do custom methods. We don't need to write the custom code. So that is all done. And also, if we go on submit button, so how we will move on second component? That is the another task. So I start uh, with this one. When I will submit it, if it all the fields are fulfill the requirement, no any error, then I will click on submit and it will go on second component. So let's do code of submit. Okay, now you guys can also see the on submit method we have in the Formic element. We don't need this set values, set timeout, refactor it. Definitely this address component is calling. So here I write the code submit one from the component, and in the parent, in the stepper, we go over here and get it here. Get step content and set active step. Also get it from here. Set set steps and call it and pass it from here. Submit set step. We just need to copy it. Definitely on every component we need to tackle it. We are calling the component in the root and we are passing the submit with the index values, so it will work according to the indexing, the 0 1 2 step form. Okay, submit, same thing over here. When I click on submit, same thing, submit, call the method. This is our last component. So here is we have a back button as well. If we want on the last from last component go back, so then we can go back. Here is we have a payment, same thing here, but first of all I just show you defense and submit. So when I click on the submit button, you guys can see this is all required fields. So now put it the city name here and email address. Now submit it. Wow, you guys can see now I am on step second stepper form. I am on the second stepper form, and here is we have this component render. First name, last name, email address, because I have copied everything. Now I refactor it because this one is our uh, payment. So first of all, I just go here. This get steps is showing here. This all. So first of all, I just change this name, add address. Second is add payment or anything you want. Third one is review. I just show you here. Now you can see add address, add payment. So in the add payment, definitely we need to add payment. So it should be according to our need or requirement. So here I come back and which field we want to create, card name and card number. Okay, we don't need email address here. And here you guys can see the first name, email address we don't need, we remove it from here. Here is we have a card name and the field is card number. Okay, and here I call, that is we don't need now, later I will tell you what these values we will get. So now here we have first name and it replaced with card name. Here it should be card name, and here last name should be card number. Card number. Okay, and here we don't need email address, so we just remove it. Whatever the fields we have, just call the component field and the component error message, nothing else. It's pretty simple. Now I go back, fill this field, or I just refresh it and click on submit. So you can see here is I have all required fields. Error I can see here. So once I put the values here, it fulfill the requirement and now submitted. So you can see I am on second component. Now the card name is Daniyal Nogori and the card number is 42. The validation I have put it over here as well. Okay, it's maximum length. Okay, so when I, yes, the length is more than 20, then it will throw the error. So now you guys can see must be 20 characters or less. So when I click on submit, it will not go on review. So I, now it's fulfilled the requirement. Now I click on submit, I am on review. So this is basically a stepper form, multi-stepper form with you guys can see also multiple forms in the step by step process. So this is how you guys can do. So this is I have done, and now in the review component, what I need to do, it should be add address, add payment, all these values should be in review component. So let's create a review component now. and pass all the values from first and second component to review component. I'm coming on review. Here is I have form. We don't need this form. Here I will get div. I'm not good in UI, so I'm just creating it. You guys definitely, I believe, are expert. So you make the UI better according to your requirement. Area, city, card name, and card number. Here is we have email. What do you want? If you have a form like a calculator, so you guys can also total it here. This is area. From the values I will get the property. Values dot area, city, values dot city. Now card name, values dot card name, and card number. Okay, card number, yes. Email, same thing with email address, value dot email. Now pass the values using the state. Just create a state to maintain all the values. Set to struct, set form values. Using this state, we will get all the values in our last component. Use state. Here I define the initial values. Pass it here. Step content form set steps. Set, yes. Set form values. Set form values from here and form values. Both pass from this component. And get it in this function. Set form values and form values and pass it from here. Values here From here, we definitely we need a set form values. That is all we are doing, just because we need all the values in last component. Set form values, and here set form values. Go back in our address component. Here, get it. Set form values and set the state from here. Whatever the values here, that is the values we are getting by Formic, and I have all created the state. Now, same thing in payment, set form values, and on submit, definitely we need to set the state, all the values from here. Now I have done a lot of code. Let's try to run. Once submitted, definitely it will give me the error. Its email address, submit, card name is Daniyal Nogori, card number is 4220 whatever. Okay, it should be less than 20 characters. Submitted. Here is, you guys can see card number and card name and card number, but I don't have area and city here. Let's debug it. Why I don't have the area and city here? Let's go back to the code. What a mistake I did. Set step. Yes. So pass the previous values from here. Yes, values, form values. Same thing we will do with payment. Okay. Here is, we have the previous values. Why I set the previous values, I will explain it in a second. Here is our previous values. Same is here. And same thing we will do on address. The previous value, why I set it, the reason is when I will go back, when I will go back, then definitely we need to set all the values in a stepper. So just run it now. This is void email address, card name is Daniyal Nogori, card number is 321321 whatever. Now you guys can see this, we have all the values using this set form value state which I have created, and the previous state why I created. Now I am let me show you the back button from here, then you guys can understand better. When I move back from stepper 3 to stepper 2, then definitely we need to maintain all the values. Back from here, submit button, definitely I have passed from our stepper, so I can get it here. On click, I will call the submit and pass the value. It should be 1. And same thing we will do on payment method, on payment component. A back button over here, and the back button. On click, call the arrow function and submit and get the submit method. Yes, I'm getting the submit method here. Okay. Now let's run. Defense city should be Karachi, and email address should be Daniyal Nogori at gmail.com. Card name is Daniyal Nogori. Card number 4201. Blah blah blah. Submitted. You guys can see in the review component we have all the data. But if we have, let's suppose here is we have a submit button, and on this submit the data is submitted on server or on database. So before that I just thought, oh, I made some mistake in add payment component. So how we can do the change? We have a back button in a stepper form, and here it's something wrong here, because the value should be shown here. And I think in the value initial value I think, yes, in the initial value, yes, I got it. Let's run it now. It should be 5 characters. Email address is unvalid. Yes. Oh, okay. Submitted. Back it. Yes. In the initial value now, I will set previous values. That is why I receive this in step-by-step components. When I will go back, definitely we need to maintain the state as well in previous values. Spelling mistake, I think. Go back here. Yes, here is I have value. Yes, get values. Perfect. Let's try now. Karachi email address, this one. Submit it and try to check. All done. Perfect. Now here is I have a card name Daniyal Nogori. Card number is whatever we want. Right now, no any condition. So just submit it. Here is we have all the data. Now if I want to change the data, I just randomly I thought, oh, the area should is not defense, so we can back it and we can change it over here, defense to Gulshan. Now submitted. Area is now defense. Yes, the reason is it is not changing the state. Defense Karachi, email address this, card name Daniyal Nogori 4201, and submitted. We have everything over here. So we can also debug it. That is not the big issue, but the basic purpose of the stepper form is all done. So if any confusion, any
Daniel, could you just revise it a bit?
yes sir, sure, 100%.
Hmm.
I just revise it. Before that, I just give me a second. I just see the previous value over here. Set values. Now check it. Submit. DSPD. Card name. Back. Back. Check it. AAA. Perfect. I was used the spread operator. That was my mistake. And also the previous value should not be here. Okay. So sir, yes, definitely. I revised the code. What I have done. Basically, you all students can see this is a stepper form. If we have a stepper form, how to build using Formic and Yup. Definitely, we have multiple forms in our application, so the custom handling is very difficult on and big applications. So we definitely use the libraries and the best libraries. So Formic is one of the best, so we are using the Formic. And here is you have the fields, and I show you from the code. First of all, I create this stepper form using material UI. Here is I have a component of stepper, and here what I did, I just, to be honest, I just copy it from here. This is our stepper form. This stepper form I am using. I just copy it and refactor it according to my need, according to my requirement. So here is definitely the requirement was first component should be address, second component should be payment, and third component should be review. So here what I did, in this step index, how it is working, this material UI stepper form, how it is working on the indexing. This is our 0 index, this is 1 index, this is 3 second index. Once the active index is 1, so the component is render this one, this one. If the active index step index is 2, then render this component. If step index is 0, then render this component. So what I did, I just created multiple components. Here is I have a address component, this one. Here is I have a payment component, this one. And here is I have a review component, this one. And here what I did, definitely on submit, I need to set the step, and I don't want once the page reload, so all the components shown on first step. So definitely I need to handle using my conditions. So here I passed multiple things, like first is step index, set step, and on this component, in this component I pass it from here the set form values, the previous values, what why I used, I have already explained. When I back, let's suppose I just put it the values here and submit it. Once I just randomly thought, oh, my address is wrong, I have filled, so definitely I can go back. And here I need to maintain the state. I don't want, because you guys know, when I click the submit button, the component is destroyed. I have now on the second component, so definitely we need to maintain the state. So for this, I have set this all the attributes, set form values, and pass it in all components. So in this way, I can get all the values in our third component. So once I submit it, I just put it the card name here, card number here, and submit it. Then you guys can see in the review, I can get the values. How I can get it? Now I back to the review, and in this component, in this review component, I pass it the values from here. You guys can see submit and values, the form values. And now coming back on the review, so here from this values I can get the data. So anything else you want? And one more thing I want to add, that is Sir Zeeshan in the last class has explained very well. That is why I did not spend much time on Yup and Formic. The Formic provide us the components if we need the fields, so we don't need to create the input fields like this. Here is we have a field component, and here is we have a error message component. Just we need to pass the name, which we have already set the name property above, this card number and this card name. So this is all handled by library for us. So sir,
No,
I'm done.
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Daniyal.
Thank you so much.
And I think you explained it very well. Adil, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, please take over.
I
Okay.
can hear you. Okay. Okay. Now. Okay.
Can you see my screen now? I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so let's get started. Now, what we're going to be doing is building out a similar kind of app, but now we'll be working with TypeScript. So let's start. I'll change into my GitHub and I'll do a npx create React app, and we'll call this let's call it React or TypeScript Material UI Formic. Let's call it this, and then this will be a TypeScript template. And then I'll just kind of say what we'll be doing. So we'll work with Material UI. We'll use some of the field components. So we'll use text field. We'll maybe use a button from here. Um, and we'll build out a form. We'll collect some data with, and we'll have Formic and Yup for validation. So once this is done, we'll start adding those dependencies as well. Okay, so project is created. Let's switch into the project. What did I call it? Uh,
You gave it a long name.
yeah. Okay, and then so here we have our project here. So and then now that it's a TypeScript project, I need to install some things here to make it work. So we need types React and add this. wrong with this?
You are also facing internet issue.
I
My
think
speed is
so.
also very.
Bandwidth has been really bad today.
Yes.
All of us are waiting for Starlink.
Yeah.
Daniel, I suspect you are going to put Starlink on top of your car.
Here we go. So let's
Many
install.
congratulations to otherwise.
Yeah, right. Now let's install. Fingers crossed. A Material UI.
Yes.
Material UI core. Daniel, was that you singing?
I was thinking my mic is mute.
Okay. Maybe you can sing for us while we wait for these. Okay.
Uh,
So that's Material UI, and now install Typeface, Roboto. Save this, and then I think this is the last of it. We can get started finally. Yay, finished. Okay. So let's open up our project, see what we have. Um, hmm. No, no, no. It's not what I wanted. Documents. GitHub. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. Now we have our project open at last. And let's also launch this. Okay, while that happens, let's go to our index file and let's add the font that we downloaded, just so we have it here. Let's say import typeface. Still starting. And let's make sure that our font has it here. So Material UI is designed with Roboto, so we want to make sure it's up front. Here. And then I'll also just add a couple things here. I'm going to make it dark gray. Dark gray is fine. And I'm going to do, let's make this flex. Content center. Okay, and what's this? Oh, I think I didn't install one of those. Where is my terminal? I missed one. npm install types react dom. Let that happen. We'll keep going. Okay, so we've added our font and we've updated the CSS for the main index a little bit, just so we have a we'll just have a dark gray color, and then we made it a flex. Okay. Now in our app.css, we can get rid of a bunch of these things. Get rid of all of this. And we have app.css, and then inside the app.css, what we have. Okay, I'm just gonna get rid of everything, and then here for our app component, we'll make it white background, give it some width and some padding. And let's make it a little bit rounded. So there we go. Okay, so we have our component. And now let's see. What we'll do next is in our app component, we have everything looking fine. Now let's go and install Formic. So npm install Formic. Okay, so that's Formic, and then we also need to install yup. Install yup, and then it has types yup. So we have it working with our TypeScript. And while that happens, let's go back to our code, and in our app file, let's import. Here we can import a Formic and form from Formic. That. And now inside of our component here, let's make our sign up form. So let's just say register. And then here we'll add our Formic component here. Is it still going? Okay. So that's our Formic component. And now, as Daniyal and Zeeshan has shown previously, we need a couple of different pieces of data that goes with the Formic component. So let's build those. So first, inside here, here we can add. So we need an initial value for our fields that we'll have, which will go inside like this object, like this. So we have a placeholder here, and now what we also need, because we're working with TypeScript, we need some types. So we can create an interface, and this will be our values. So let's call this form values. And then inside of this interface, we can add some of the fields we want. For now, let's just add one. So let's have a name field, and this will be a string type. And then we can add more fields later. Let's just get one working. Okay, so now that we have our interface, we also need the initial values for this data. So what we can do is we can have a separate. We can save them in a separate object here. So let's create const, and this will be for our initial values, and the type will be the form values. And then inside of it, we'll have the initial value of our data. So right now we just have name, and this will be an empty string. Like that. And now that we have the data here, we can pass it into the initial values here. Like that. Now, so that takes care of one of the requirements of Formic. Then we also need the onSubmit function. So for that, what we can do is, what happened? Yeah, it's missing onSubmit. That's fine. So next we need the onSubmit function to make Formic work. So like this onSubmit, and instead of creating code here, what we can do again is to have our submit function separately. So what we can do is here before the return, create a const here and call this a maybe we can say for submit, and then inside of this we'll have an arrow function, and for this we'll be getting the values, and the type will be the form values. Right? Um, and the other thing is we don't want this to go anywhere, so we make it a void. Now we want to show the user the values that they submit when they hit the submit button. So one way we can do is, just for now, is have an alert, and we can alert with we can do a JSON.stringify of the values. Okay. Okay, so that's our function. And now that we've created it, we can go back to our onSubmit here inside Formic, and we can call this for submit. Okay, so now that we have this, we can, let's ignore this for now. Now that we have our Formic set up, we can start working on building the actual form. So inside the Formic, we can create our form here. And what we'll do is we'll pass the props here. And here we'll return our form. Regular parentheses here. And here we'll call our form. Good, the errors are gone. Okay. So now we can start adding the fields for our form. So we can use field from Formic, and then we can start creating the first field that we have added, the name field. So inside the form here, what we'll do is let's create a div, and then inside the div, what we can do, if we just create like a simple form, we have like a label, and this would be like the label would be name because that's the field we've created, and then here we'll have field, and then for the field component from Formic, we have some, we can have name. We have to give a name of the field, and the name we've created, this is for the name, so that's confusing, right? So name, and then the type would be defined with as, and then so it's a input field like that, and then we close the field like this. So we'll have a name with label with the basic field like this. So this would be like without Material UI. Now what we can do is we can add some validation with yup. So let me make sure yup was installed. Okay, yes. So for the validation, let's import yup here. So import star as yep from yep. That should work. Okay. And yeah, so now for the validation, we'll use this schema, the validation schema. So let's create first our, let's create a const here. So, and let's call it register schema. And it should be this, a register schema. And then for this, this will be a yup object dot shape. Okay, and then we'll add our validations here. So we have created one field called name, and it's a string. And then for the name, we can have a minimum of, I guess you can't really have a one-letter name. You'll have at least two. And then the error message, if it doesn't meet that requirement, is um, name must have at least 2 characters. Okay. And we can say it's a required field as well. So require, and we say name is required. This. Okay. And that is our field. That's our register schema. Now we use this in our Formic here. So after on submit, we can add the validation schema. And here we can call, what did I call it? Register schema. Register schema. Okay. Let's make sure it's working. Looks fine. Okay. Now, for our form, we need to do a couple of things. So as part of the props, we get access to a bunch of different pieces of information. So one thing what we can do is do some destructuring here and get out a couple of the things we need here. So I'm going to do this. Instead of getting props, I'm going to get something called 30 and is valid. We'll check if the form has been corrupted and if the form has valid, if it's passed the test. Okay, so that's that. Now, what we also want to do is have a button here after the div. I'm going to create a button, and this will be a type submit button, and we'll say maybe register, or I'll just say sign up. And yeah, so okay. Now what else I want to do is this button, if we want, right now it's clickable, but maybe we want to make it so it is only clickable if the form has been the form meets the requirements. So what we can do here is with the disabled property here, we can add if the form is not dirty or it's not valid, then we'll disable it. So yeah, so now it's disabled because it doesn't meet the 2-character requirement. Okay. Now, what we also need to add is the error message. So we have added the field here, and what we can do is add right after the field, we can add the error message, and the error message is for the name field, like that. Oh, and I probably have to import error message from here. Yeah. So there's our error. Okay. Let's keep going. Now, so now this is just a basic, simple form. Now let's convert this with Material UI. So if we look at Material UI, we have in here some components, and then inside the components, we since we're working with text fields, so for our name it's a text field. So let's go and look at the text field components. And so we have a few different options. We can use the standard, filled, or the outlined. We can go with standard maybe. And yeah, so first let's go, and so what we can do is create a component. I'm going to create a separate component here. So let's make a folder for components. And then inside of it, we can have a component for form field. I needed this to be a folder actually. Form field. Try again. And inside of it, I need the form field.typescript and the form field.css. Okay. So now inside the form field, let's create the basic structure for the field. So here, let's just do quickly import React from React. And then here we'll have a function Formic field. We'll get some props, and then inside we'll return a div. Div with the class name, and let's call this form field. And placeholder there. And let's export default this form field. Form field. Form. Okay. So that's our basic component. And now let's in our app tsx here, let's try and place it. I'll place it after, and it's called form field. And auto import, so it should have been imported. Here you go. What's it saying? We'll work on it. Okay. Now let's go back to the form field TypeScript here, and inside here, let's say let's import the material UI. We're going to use text field from the material UI. So, and that uses add material UI core / text field. This. Okay. And now we have this. We can add the text field. If I get rid of this for a second. Okay, so this is where the form will go, right? And now here we can add the text field from Material UI. Here we go. Okay. Now, again, we're working with TypeScript. So what we do is we need to get we need to set up the interface for the properties that we'll be calling. So let's create the interface, and it's called form field, and this is the props. And then what we need is the label for the text field. So because it doesn't have a label, and we want to pass the label when we call this component. So it'll be a label, and the label will be a string type. This. Now we can call props. Okay. I need to give some types here. So the form field will have a type. This is a React functional component, and the type is the form field props. Like this. And then instead of having props, maybe let's structure and get the label. Label is missing in type. What's this? Missing in type, line 43. Oh, in the app. Oh, okay. Yeah, so let's ignore this for a second. And then inside the text field, what we need is to make this a label. We need to pass the label from the props. And to get rid of that error, when we call the text field here in the form field that we're calling, we need to give a label. So here we'll give label, and the label for this should be name. Now that error should go away. Yep. Okay, so here's our name field. Okay, good. Okay, let's make it inside of our text field here. We can add another property here to make full width. So that way it'll span across. It will span across. And then let's see. Now let's make this. So we haven't really connected this to Formic yet. So if we just add data in the first field, it doesn't really do anything. It'll let us submit. So what we need is to connect this field to Formic. Okay, so how do we connect a Material UI field to Formic? So what we'll do inside of this form field TypeScript file, let's add Formic. So we'll add import, and we'll import field from Formic. And So what we want to do is, instead of having the text field like this, we'll call the field component from Formic and then pass in the text field as a attribute. Okay, so to do this, what we'll do is create a field, this, and close the field here. And then, so we have to give this field some attributes, and this we have to give the text field the type of field it is as an attribute here. So, and we use the as keyword and then pass in text field. Okay. So, okay, so now it kind of looks like this, and we have our other field we created here. So now that we have created the text field, we need to also give it a name, because that's Formic will require it. So along with our label, we'll also pass in the name, and this is a string. And once that we've passed it, we also need to destructure it here. So name and label. And then now that we've destructured it, we can call the name inside of our field here. So as, and then the name will be name, and then we can also give the label. So label equals label, and we can also make this full width as well. And then the error that's coming up is because when we called the form field here, we haven't passed the name. So here we'll pass name equals name. Okay. So here we go. So if I pass in some data, it's adding it in both places. Okay. And then the error message is still here. So what we also need to do is make the error message work with our material UI. So for this, we can use the error message with Formik, sorry, and then so let's do that first. So where we are importing field, let's also import error message. And now that we have error message, we can call it. So what we can do is with material UI inside the field, we can call something called helper text. And inside the helper text, we can pass the error message. So here we'll pass the error message. And then we have to tell which field the error message is from. So the name equals name. That. And then we also have to close this. Okay. So now we have added the error message along with the field here. So if I click out of it, now it's showing the error message here. Okay. Next, this would be a required field. So what we can also do is add another required attribute here. And this, I think it will give a asterisk here, which will make it seem to the user that it's a required field. Okay. So now we've created this, we can get rid of the text, the old text field, and in our app component, we can get rid of this div. So now we have our name field and the sign up button. Okay. Next, what we can do is make this a little bit more reusable. So what we can do is,
Adil, we are running short of time. I
where
think you gave a very good flyby for working in TypeScript,
yeah.
and I think the students can take it from here.
Yeah, sure. So I think Daniel and Zeeshan had covered the rest pretty
Uh,
well, so they can just pick it up from here. Yeah,
we have covered most of the things, including now TypeScript and how to put it all together.
yeah.
And I think students have a pretty good hang of it. And
Okay.
I think you can have your dinner now. And Zishan is also looking hungry. Uh,
Yeah.
but I wanted to finish off forms today. From the next class, we will start
Storybook.
working on component-based development. Daniel will basically cover bit for dev, and Zishan will cover storybook, and Adil will develop an application on top of it, a component-based development, and we'll also discuss theory. See you all guys in the next class,
Bye,
and
everyone.
thank you so much. And we are sorry we did some 30 minutes above the allotted time, but it has to be done because there is a lot of stuff coming forward. We are just getting started. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.